elections are completely in the province of the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. They should be the ones addressing the country and candidates, political parties, and stakeholders on anything to do with the elections, particularly on issues to do with what will happen in the polling stations, in the polling areas, and even outside the polling areas. We are seeing a pattern that is emerging that is very dangerous in respect of the free conduct of elections in the Republic of Kenya, where the executive is trying to play a role which we have fought for in the past to try and make sure that the executive, or rather the role of the executive, is limited in the conduct of the elections. Mr. Matiang'i particularly has attacked our plans, which we will continue with and will ensure those plans are implemented, that at the polling stations, other than having our polling agents who will be inside the polling stations, we are having support. We are having volunteers and supporters of the National Super Alliance who are adapting polling stations. And by adapting polling stations, their duty will include ensuring that the electoral area, the polling area, is safe from any electoral misconduct. For example, that there's no bribery outside the polling stations. And for example, urging our people in the areas around the elections to turn up in large numbers, those who are registered as voters. And for example, to ensure that there are no materials going into polling stations which may affect the elections. For example, in areas where ballot papers probably have been printed outside the polling station, outside the IEBC, and maybe illegally introduced into polling stations. We are trying to make sure that our people are around the polling stations to ensure that there are no electoral malpractices. We are also ensuring that they stay on guard so that the process that takes place after the polling and the counting of the elections are done, that there is a free and fair transmission of election results. Just like observers who have nothing directly to do with the elections from outside Kenya are coming into the country to observe what will happen in the polling stations. We as key stakeholders are entitled to have people in the polling station to observe what is happening in the polling areas. And as you know, the Constitution talks about a transparent election, free and fair, which means elections should be done under the scrutiny and eye of the people as a whole. And to that extent, our policies surrounding adapt a polling station are to ensure that indeed there's free, fair, transparent, and credible elections. And these practices are being borrowed from other democracies like in Ghana. But outside Ghana, in many other mature democracies, like for example in the United States of America, volunteers normally come out, in order to knock doors and ensure that people go to polling stations so that there's a large turnout during the polling day. And we are therefore castigating the conduct of the executive in trying to interfere with things to do with the elections. The policemen who will be assigned to polling stations are supposed to work under the command of the presiding officers and generally under the command of the returning officers. They are seconded to the Electoral Commission and should not be seen to be commanded or ordered by the General Police Command, because the safety of the conduct of the elections, the responsibility ultimately lies with the Electoral Commission. And therefore, Mr. Matiang'i's statements on these issues are completely misguided and outside the constitutional law and the various statutes that cover the elections. Secondly, it is emerging that the central government is trying to militarize the elections. They have already talked about sending, the military, the police to certain areas which are not even trouble spots. And our assessment of what they're trying to do is to ensure that there are no turnout in these areas. NASA of late has been gaining significant support in places like Samburu, Laikipia. Marsabit was already our stronghold. Turkana was already our stronghold. We have had support growing by leaps and bounds in areas where we didn't get a full score, like in Mandera and other areas in the northern and northeastern part of the country. Now, this attempt to militarize the electoral process is dangerous. It should not happen. In fact, in order to maintain peace, security, and give people the confidence that they should go and turn out in large number in the elections, is to have less and less police presence, and particularly police who are militarized for operations like the ones we are seeing happening in parts of Laikipia. And in Laikipia, indeed, it is only taking place in areas where they think NASA has got the support of the majority of the people from those areas. So these concerns, we think, should be addressed and must be addressed. We are doing very well by our account. Our internal polls and the polls which have been conducted variously by independent pollsters continue to show that NASA is likely to win these elections by a landslide. Our guess, and in fact our commitment, is that we're going to win these elections in the first round. We are not planning for a rerun of the elections. We want to win on the first round. And all indications are that if voters are allowed to vote freely and without any interference, then we are on course in winning the elections on the 8th of August 2017. Now, we have tried to close all the loopholes insofar as the electoral process is concerned, starting with the electoral law, which was amended in 2016 December, on how votes will be counted, how votes will be transmitted, the number of voters in a polling station, and also in terms of the electoral system, which is basically electronic, the type of the register of voters, which is an electronic voters register. All these things have been achieved to ensure that we block all the loopholes that may give opportunity to our adversaries in rigging the elections in August 2017. As you may recall, the elections in 2007, the ODM PNU elections, which was stolen from ODM, the stealing of elections was very crude. It was not done through any intelligent manipulation of the elections. In 2007, it was an outright fraud in terms of giving victory to PNU and former President Kibaki. And that is why that election caused a lot of turmoil.
All right, so there is Siaya Senator James Orengo. They are responding to acting Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, who yesterday seemed to rubbish NASA's adopt a polling station strategy there, saying that only officials given for the IEBC will be allowed at polling stations. But as here, Senator James Orengo there says NASA's plans are still on to adopt polling stations. And of course, that means having volunteers and supporters of NASA coming out to ensure that the polling station is free of electoral misconduct like bribery, as he rightfully says there in that press conference. Now, of course, the adopt a polling station strategy for NASA has been quite controversial. We have acting Interior CS Fred Matiang'i. They're saying there's enough police to provide security even for the ballot papers on the ground. But NASA seems to insist that they must have their agents. So apart from having volunteers and supporters who will adopt a polling station, NASA says they will also have several polling agents who will have to be around the polling stations to guard their votes, something, of course, the acting Interior CS has refuted. Now, James Orengo has gone ahead to also continue accusing the central government of militarizing the police, especially in several NASA strongholds. He has mentioned areas like Samburu and Laikipia, where NASA has been gaining ground in the past few months, saying that the central government is militarizing police in these regions to suppress NASA voters from coming out to vote on the 8th of August. So a lot of allegations there from the NASA side, of course, saying they will continue with their adopt a polling station. We'll give you more details